But my first flip property that I bought with the intention to go in there, gut, renovate, and resell was a foreclosure. I purchased it at the auction for $100,000.
Oh, an actual live auction?
Yes,
Okay,
I had never
yeah,
been in
tell
the
us about that one
property.
time
I had
too.
nothing to do. So this was, I think I mentioned it before in our full story breakdown near the start of us doing this podcast. But yeah, I went to a foreclosure auction. I was the only person there. It was the judge, the bank, and myself. It's not actually a judge, it's like a lawyer that handles it. So it's the lawyer, the bank's lawyer, and myself. The bank literally only bid to their number. Most times, I've gone to every single property in advance. I will drive over there, even though you cannot access the property. I would walk around,
you'd
peek
look
in the
around.
windows, do all my due
Talk to a
diligence,
neighbor.
make sure it was decent, talk to the neighbor, and then go bid. In this case, I didn't have time to do that. It was the first time ever that I didn't have time, but I ran over to the auction house, went inside, and again, I was the only person there, lawyer, bank's lawyer, myself. And I went in there. I didn't have any money because usually you need to place a 10% deposit before you leave.
Yeah.
I didn't even bring any money because I didn't really have intent. And so
Impulse
they
buy.
opened the bid and he goes, based on the outstanding amount owing, blah, 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 it's $2,700. Anyone like to bid $2,700? And the bank goes, yeah, $2,700, obviously, because they're going to buy their property back.
$2,700?
Yeah, but now again, the bank's sitting there, so you're not going to get this for $3,000. So then I'll bid $5,000, which is maybe I shouldn't have raised the roof so high.
It's like, sir, we go in $5 increments here.
So I said 5, and then the bank said 10, and then I think I might have said 15, and they said 20, and then I might have said like 50 or something, and the bank said 75.
Oh wow, you boys really got serious in a hurry.
Yeah, it's fun for anyone who's
that's dangerously fun.
It's insane. And like I was heart racing at this point for a $75,000 house. Anyways, bid, and then they started to slow down around 90. Like I think I said like 90, and they were like, instead of going up by 5, they were like 92, and I was like,
crack in the armor.
This is the this is the spot.
92,500.
And so then, we started going up by smaller increments, and I think they did 97.5, and I said 100. And then, like, I kind of just gotten used to him, just like the bank going 102, and I just then it was kind of keeping me calm. But then when I said 100, the banker just kind of like started like packing up his bag, and I was like,
and like, wait, I didn't mean it.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, like it was, and then the lawyer's like, all right, I guess it's yours, and he like pointed at me. And I was like, okay, well.
I didn't bring my wallet.
Yeah, first order of business, I have no money.
Can I e-transfer you?
Yeah, and he was just like, and I'm like, literally, my bank was across the street. I could see it out of the window. And I was like, look, my bank is right there. Can I run across the street, get the deposit?
Like, who is this guy?
And run back and give it to you. And that's like,
you just leave and don't come back. That was so good.
That was like a strict no. Like that's a hard no from most of them. This guy was the nicest guy ever, and he said, "You have like 3 minutes." And I literally just am like sprinting through the courtroom.
God, that would never happen now because you can't even get to the teller inside of 20 minutes these days. But
Literally. And so then I'm like running across the street, getting to the bank. I'm like anxiously waiting in line, get the money, come back. Hand him the money, gives me a receipt, and I had no idea when I was going to get the keys to the house. I think they gave me a phone number or something. Anyways, start going through that process. Come to find out, I tried to get a mortgage on the house. Bank won't do it because I can't get into the home, and I have no income. So
what?
I end up having to fundraise the capital to close.
I mean, you did not tell this story before, by the way.
Okay, so I end up fundraising the capital to close.
Fundraising the capital. Okay.
It's a small amount. I use the term fundraise capital, but realistically, I pool together the money to close. And so show up, give them the next amount of money. You have to do it within 14 days. So 14 days later, I show up at the courthouse, give them the remainder of the money. Then they give me a contact number for a property manager. And then they have to wait till the deed transfers and all that, which they don't do in a hurry. And maybe 50 days, 60 days later,
Jesus.
long, I finally get access to get the keys. And so I met with someone, they gave me the keys, and then we drive over there, again, not knowing anything about the house. And I'm like, okay, fingers crossed, we walk in this house and it's perfect, and I can just put a friggin' for sale sign in the front driveway and off we go. Turn the door. go to like push the door open.
The door falls over.
Yeah, basically turn the lock, push the door, and it opens maybe like 3 feet, like most of the rotation. And it's a split entry, and there's just stuff all the way up to like the ceiling going down the staircase, and then stuff all the way up all the steps, and then the entire upstairs, like it's open. It's like one of those open split entries where it's like the railings around.
Yeah.
There's just stuff piled probably about 3.5 feet high.
How did it compare to the hoarding situation I just sent you the other day?
I'd say it looked cleaner because what was hoarded was actual like people's stuff.
Yeah.
Come to find out it wasn't cleaner. Chandler had sent one that was pretty dirty recently, but this was just a ton of like kids' toys, family stuff, it's sad.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was like, all right, here we go. And of course, it smelled like animal piss and manure. And it was like, all right, this is going to be a project. And like, I basically trudged around over a lot of the stuff to try and take a look and see what things look like. The kitchen was just like nasty, so I couldn't quite tell. Bathroom was pretty nasty and needed to be done. It was 2 bathrooms. So upstairs there was a kitchen.
Where was this?
Living room, dining room, Harrietsfield.
Okay.
Which is
Random
also
dude.
a neighborhood which was going through a bunch of stuff because they have water quality
Yeah,
issues, and all the
big
homes
water
are on well, which I didn't know when I made the bid until I drove out there to go look at the house.
Do they blame
every
the
telephone
dump?
pole has get our kids clean water. Where's our water? As I'm driving out, and it's in like that red spray paint where it's like dripping down, and I'm like, oh god, like this is a scene.
Neal's like, if it's brown, drink it down.
Yeah. So, anyways, the neighboring houses were nice, and the thing that gave me confidence is on either side of the main road, there were subdivisions with a few new homes in there that were going at the time for like $450, which when I bought that $450 for a house in Halifax was a lot.
Yeah.
But these are brand new, like.
All right, so get to the work. Did you clean out the junk?
So then I was like, again, I had no money and I had to make this thing work, and I was hoping to simply get this turned over and relisted and sold for like $170 or $180, which was obviously not going to happen. So I did the work. So this is when I had no experience, no knowledge of anything. First thing I did was I ordered a bin to the house. So I called, I'm not even going to say who it was, but I called the bin company, and that was my first mistake off the hop. I just called a few, one of them gave me the cheapest price, but I didn't realize that bins could have timelines on them. So the bin company came and dropped it off, and like I was kind of avoiding going to this house because there was so much stuff to empty. And then after maybe 3 days, I get a call from the bin company and like, hey, you ready for us to come pick it up? And I was like, no.
Like,
and
nah, I'm gonna just wait till I fill it first.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe before I gotta put some stuff in there.
Uh.
Like, oh yeah, well your bin rental ends in 2 days, and then it's another like $300 to keep the bin. And I'm like, what? And so literally that weekend I took off, and I probably went there first thing in the morning at 8, and I always spent 12 to 14 hours there, filled the brim to the top to the point where I was stepping on it and I was jumping on it to push all the stuff down. And that hadn't even emptied maybe half the house. When the truck came to like load it, it was like trying to like lift it up, and it was like the truck almost like broke down.
Just you solo throwing the stuff in there? Or you
Me
have boys?
solo all day. I took all the garbage. I went and bought gloves, and I was throwing it out. Come to find out, everything's covered in cat piss and shit because cats have been running all over through all the stuff.
Oh, at least you have gloves.
So I had the gloves, but every time you lift something up and half it ends up on you.
Oh my God, I wish I saw
doing that, empty it into the bin, get the first bin taken away, another bin brought back, which I was not expecting, load that whole thing up. And as I'm loading that one up, the family actually pulled up. They used to live in the house, which was horrible. And they asked, like, oh my God, like, can we get in there? And the little kids came running out asking if they can come in and get their stuff. And I was like, oh shit. Like this was like literally as I threw like the last piece of garbage onto the bin. I was like, you kidding me? I just spent the last like 40 hours emptying garbage of this house. And now there's nothing left in here. The only thing I did do is I had taken one of the Tupperware container, like the big Tupperwares, and I had filled it with all their pictures, any of the family photos they had. So I had like 30 family photos like in frames for them. And they took that and they were super thankful. And like they understood that it wasn't me who pushed them out of their home. Like the bank had taken their home and I bought it from the bank effectively, even though it's not a direct translation like that, but that's effectively what took place. But anyways, that was pretty disheartening to watch as the kids kind of like roam through the home trying to find their stuff. Anyway, so I did all that, clean out myself. And then as I got further into it, like I tried to salvage a lot of stuff. I just basically went on our local classifieds, which is Kijiji, and called flooring guys, plumbers, the whole shebang. And my friends did help me with some stuff, moving the appliances. Shout out Ian if you still listen to this. He literally lifted all the appliances basically on his own, and he was going down the staircase, and the whole fridge was still full of food, but it must have been sitting there with no power for
Gross.
4 or 5 months. So when you opened it, it was an entire ecosystem. Like they could have filmed Avatar in there. If you did like hyper zoom, it looked like it's like there's people flying around and stuff, and there's like green arms going across. Anyways, we like taped it up like 50 times. It's like, I can't clean this fridge. Yeah. I called Efficiency Nova Scotia and I was like, you guys give $50 for old fridges? I'm
gonna need that $50.
So we go to like bring it down the staircase and Ian's on the bottom. The door like cracked open and you just hear all the stuff like fall, shatter, and just like the black liquid just streams out and pours down his arm. Anyways, he was a trooper. We got them all to the side of the road. Obviously, they went missing in about 2 seconds. There was a camper in the front yard that I sold for money. There was a canoe in the backyard that I sold for money. And then a bunch of other miscellaneous things that I ended up selling in Kijiji. Anything I could salvage, I was keeping and selling in Kijiji by being there all the time. Anyways, so we get all the garbage out. Then I start kind of doing an inventory of what I need to do. And like I said, I went on the classifieds and just started calling people. I had no contacts and I didn't have anyone who really did this business. And so I was just bringing a bunch of people out. And effectively, I was calling the cheapest people I could find. Like there was ads like, we install flooring, 99 cents. We install cabinets, $10. Like at that time, people weren't as in demand.
Different time.
You could actually to this day, I still have some of those contractors that do work with us.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they all came out and we started going through it. The kitchen was like missing cabinet doors. The ones around the oven were all melted, and a few other things. I actually took one of the cabinet doors off and I went to a hardware supplier here and found the same profile of cabinet door.
Yeah.
And instead of redoing the kitchen, I just reordered 4 cabinet doors for like $75.
Yeah.
And screwed them on. So I did that. I went and screwed those on. Like I said, and then I ended up looking at the floor and I tried to salvage it, and then we slowly started pulling it back and it all had to go. So I tore all the floor out. My buddies helped me with that. So I got another bin and tore all that stuff out. Same with all the trim, pulled all the trim off. Then materials, same thing. During this whole time, I just knew what I needed. I would shop the flyers like a freak and just watch like, oh, Kent's got clearance on tiles and I need 20 square feet of it. And it's literally 99 cents a tile. I would go and pick it up.
So
flooring, same thing.
Did you install any of the flooring?
I didn't install any of the flooring myself because I knew that I would just mess it up and I'd be beaten around. So like I said, I went and found the cheapest guy to do it there. Even the painting I started, and then I hired someone else to do it. But I did basically the demo and the cleanup. But I realized at that time I was just starting my career. Actually, no, I was still in school. So I was trying to finish school and then start my career during that time. The value to pay someone to do it was so important to me.
Well, this is the thing. So if you're looking at that in hindsight.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I'll finish really quick before you.
Yeah.
So I went through all of it. I spent probably about 20 grand cleaning it all up. Put it on market for $219. I think we ended up selling for $200. Again, in the market where you wouldn't sell overnight.
Yeah.
So I netted probably 70-ish grand in my pocket when it was all said and done because I represented myself on the sale.
Yeah, and you had probably some carrying costs and stuff like that, and closing costs and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you did that in large part because you had no other option. And similar to my first renovation, I put siding and I put windows into a purchase plus improvement mortgage. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited. I got some new windows in there and I got some new siding. So the place looked way better like right away. But everything else there, I did myself with the help of my dad. And so that included, very first thing is I opened up like a pass through in this wall, right?
Yep.
Wall between the kitchen and the living room, did a little pass through.
Yeah.
Just cut it out. Wasn't load bearing, hung the drywall and tried to mud it in. My dad's very handy, so he helped with that. Baseboard, laminate flooring, painted every inch of it.
You did all the flooring?
God awful colors, yeah. We did it together, my dad and I. I think my father-in-law too. Just kind of chipping away at it. And then from there, so I did that one pretty much all ourselves in terms of the actual cosmetics. Again, I didn't do the siding, didn't do the windows. And then the next property kind of was a little bit bigger of a renovation. I started bringing a couple guys to do like drywall work. But again, I was in there painting, doing some baseboard and things like that. Another property, my father and I did tile, which was a nightmare.
I will say I did all the light, again, small stuff that I felt comfortable doing would be all light fixtures as well.
Yeah.
and any of that kind of stuff that you could do, like small things like that. I handled any of that kind of crap to try and alleviate, because trying to get people to do small random bull crap was so expensive.
Yeah.
Hooking in a new toilet, hooking up a new vanity. I did that.
Totally.
Which I shouldn't be doing necessarily, but
Yeah. And I always look at that, and people ask me about this all the time, because some people are a bit more fortunate where they have the option, and maybe they would obviously prefer to do it for free, do it themselves, whatever. But they have just enough means where maybe they can hire some people.
Yeah.
And they always ask, what you would do. And, the numbers have been pretty tight historically, and they're going to be really tight coming here soon. Like, people are going to have to resharpen their pencils and roll up their sleeves and do a bit more work, do a bit more flyer hunting, and not just be like, well, I'm going to get the nice ones. Like, no, I'm going to get the one that's on sale. Like, people are going to have to get a little bit more creative on that in this next little while if they want to, burn model stuff and flip stuff. But the other thing is just, I've told people, if you don't do it yourself, it's really hard to engage tradespeople and know what you're talking about and understand the value of stuff. And if you are at a point where your time is really worth more, that's the other time that you want to switch over as well. Because it got to the point as my business started to get a little bit more productive, I realized I could make more money selling houses than fixing this home. And the one that really solidified it for me was I was working on this 2-unit property, and it was taking forever, and I was effectively doing most of it myself. Well, not that's not true, but I was doing a lot of it myself. All the baseboards I was doing myself, hanging the doors I was doing myself, all the ticky-tack stuff, the light fixtures, some basic work to the steps. I had someone come in and install linoleum flooring, had bath fitter into the bathroom, and had person do the kitchen. And man, everything was taking so long and so long and so long. And what I realized at the end was that because the project took me, I think it took me like 4 months to get 1 unit ready and another 3 months to get the second unit ready, the combined 7 months that could have maybe been jammed down to 3 months. The savings there on the 2-unit, $3,000 times 3 months, like, man, I could have paid an extra $8,000
and been in the same place,
and been in the exact same place,
and worked less,
and then had my time back to go do something else. So that was around my 3rd or 4th property that really clicked for me. And then since that point, I have outsourced it. Like, I've got a good group of tradespeople here now. But even like installing tile, which again was one of the worst experiences of my life, because you're there on your hands and knees, like panicking that it's drying and that it's going to pop up, and like it is a nightmare. And then realizing, some old Italian dude can do it in 20 minutes way better. Makes me realize what my time is worth in value. But I do, to this day, if I could do it all again, I would still want it to go through that experience. Do you feel the same? Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's a hard one you went through, but you learned something from there. This is maybe why you're so stingy, I've realized now. Like, you learned that thriftiness back then.
Before I answer that, I have to tell one really quick story that I was laughing about. There was a couple hilarious moments in this house. This is maybe not the funniest thing ever, but the utility room, because it was on well, had a pressure tank and the full water system.
Oh, yeah?
And that must have been where the animals like to use the bathroom, because there was literally so much animal feces that we had to shovel it out.
Oh, God.
It was disgusting. Anyways, we shoveled it out. We broomed it. We tried to clean it as best as possible. And then I went to go get the pressure tank replaced. And sure enough, like, it was so old and rusted. The guy was down there, and the second he touched it, the whole pressure tank just disintegrated in his hand. And unbeknownst to us, there was more animal shit behind it and underneath it. And so there's a lot of water in those pressure tanks.
Yeah.
It just washed down and just mixed with the shit. And he's on his hands and knees underneath the staircase.
Like, God damn it, I should have answered this Kijiji ad.
It just washes out onto him. And I just, like, literally walked away, and I just hear him go, oh, fuck. Anyways, the guy was a trooper, though. He cleaned all of it up, and then he soaked all the water up. He cleaned all the water up because he was more concerned about the fact that he's going to get my laminate wet in the basement. And
it's like, you should be more concerned about the fact you're covered in feces, my friend.
That's not muddy water, bro.
Yeah.
Anyways, to answer your question, looking back on it, when I do it that way again, yes, I think I pretty quickly transitioned to getting people to do the work, but I made an effort to make sure it wasn't so I could be out partying or spending my time relaxing. At the start, it was so I could be out making money in that same time.
Right.
And I made sure that I was making as much money or more doing other things, because my biggest thing is, don't waste your time doing stuff that you're not good at when someone who is good at it can go in there and do it, right? And I do that with any of the businesses too. It's like, I'm no good at, let's say, collecting rent, so I had to hire someone to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with this, that I was no good at laying laminate, and I would spend 8 days doing this floor when someone else would spend a day. And in those 8 days, if I could sell one home or do whatever it may be at that time to make money selling cars or selling products, I could offset that. I
almost feel like it's worse when you are just handy enough that you feel you could do it yourself. And this was my challenge. I'm like, I can do that though. Like I can put that laminate.
I think
down.
A lot of people face that.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I had done floors.
That's what I know guys
that
that struggle that way. Yeah.
I had done trim and laminate and all those things, and it bugged me, especially because trim, I'm like, this is not it's not that difficult to go and cut some 45s around every corner and like figure it out and get it blasted off. And they charge a fair bit to do it. But I think a lot of people struggle with that same thing, like you said, is I can do it, but you really have to weigh in the pros and cons. And if it's a rental property, you need to consider like, how much extra time is this going to take me, because it's going to get offset by the fact that this is going to be rented sooner, and your time is valuable, because sometimes searching out a better deal, like Chandler and I talk about this all the time, if we can search out one better deal per year, we could work 50% as much as we do and be in the exact same spot. And so, looking back at it, I think I transitioned fairly quickly, which I'm happy that I did. Sometimes I wish I was a little bit more involved, because even today, contractors ream off a bunch of different terms sometimes. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm an engineer, but in engineering, we don't necessarily talk about a lot of the specifics to finishing a home, right? We talk about necessarily the structure or the mechanical systems, but we don't necessarily talk about the finishings. And so that sometimes can be a bit over my head. But even now I'm realizing, like, I'll hire a project manager before I go back and learn all that stuff now.
Yeah.
But all that to say, the market has changed, and where prices have gone up so much, and it's harder to find an easy burr, and it's harder to find that lift. All the stuff you can do yourself, and if you're just hanging out on the weekend, you should be there doing those things, and it's a great time to learn and to go through it, and find a friend who maybe can do it, and offer to pay them. Don't just expect because they're a friend they're going to come do it. That's what I did, and if they're listening, they're going to definitely comment that. But pay them to be there and buy the snacks. I say that to everyone. I'm like, look, if your friends are coming to help at a discounted rate, like, you would be paying a company $4,000 to be here. They're going to be here for half price. Bring lunch, bring beer, bring treats, make it enjoyable as well for that experience. But again, going back to it, I would do it the same way I did. I don't think I want to be more involved than I was. But I do understand that nowadays you need to be more involved, because the price limits are higher.
Well, that's the thing too. And then for a while, it's like, oh, well, I can afford to just hire people because the lift is so big. And then, there's going to be some people that have to go back around and change their model a little bit, maybe to what it was and what got them started. But again, I've struggled with the fact that, especially early on, I was like, oh man, I could totally do that. I just need the time.
Are you struggling with that still?
The big shut up. Somewhat. It's still like the time, and then when you realize time is very literally money when you're renting property or flipping property, because the quicker you get it back, the less, the more money you make, right? So, and the other thing is true when people have just enough money that they sort of feel like they can hire someone, but maybe not enough money to hire all of the best right people. It's that in between that's really, really difficult. So I guess you have to kind of know your situation. Try to learn as much as possible. I do believe that you should do everything at least once. I personally believe that. I don't know if you can make a business case for that necessarily in the case of doing tile or doing this and within reason. But having
I've never laid tile.
Oh, it's not fun. So having that experience so that you can talk turkey with people when they come in, you do know what things are worth and you really understand the opportunity cost of your time. I think that's valuable. And I feel the same way about property management, because I think understanding the dynamic and the process of renting direct to a tenant is irreplaceable. Like, that is knowledge that you should have as a landlord. And I think if day one you go with a property manager, I think you are
you have to do it a little bit,
dulling your own skill set before you even start. When you make the transition is going to be about putting a value on your time and the time that the property sits vacant and going from there. But do everything once, including property management.
The one other thing I want to add in, the other reason to do everything once is you have a better grasp of what your contractors or managers are going through, and you might be able to relate with them a little bit better. Because I see some people that might be a little bit disconnected by the fact that they just started out dealing with bigger projects and they've always just paid people. And so they have no grasp or concept or ability to rationalize or kind of connect with their contractors and their people. And people don't love, like the people that work for you are not going to love it if you're just an asshole because you're like just beating them up on price with no understanding of what it takes.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Like if you, like you said, you've laid tile, you probably have a whole new appreciation for the guys that are in there doing it, and you're a bit more respectful of their cost, of their time, and what all goes into it, versus just being like, what's the best price you can give me the, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. It also like gives you more foresight. Like, oh, okay, on the next project, I realize that these floors are going to be an issue because these two floors are not level. In order to get this floor level with that floor, I'm going to have to either build this floor up or strip that floor down. You know, how's that all going to look? So the knowledge is super valuable. Again, I know that's not a clear-cut answer. I was thinking about this because I have a client who literally is about to do a property, and he's looking at the same thing. I'm like, man, that pass-through that you should put right there is exactly what I did 14 years ago or 13 years ago. You can do that yourself, and you will save money doing it, and I think it would be a good experience, but it's not for me to say.
Here's one thing I'll say, and here's a way to maybe get your answer, is figure out what your value is on an hourly basis. That's honestly what I've always done. I'm like, I gross X per year, so I value myself as this much per hour. And if I can get something done for less than that, it's usually a go. We've talked about that on here before. Now, that's only applicable if you're out there making that money during that time. Again,
sitting around your underwear,
if you're
maybe not.
I feel like that was a personal attack.
Well, it was a little bit.
Okay, so if you're just sitting around and it's time that you know you could be doing this, you should be out there doing it. But if it's time that you're like, I'm busy working, I'm making money, I'm doing other things, then I think you make a value to that, and you can put that against what you're going to pay other people to do.
I also think that if you believe in investing in yourself, you can also put some sort of dollar value on the education that you could learn. There's a lot of people out there trying to sell you different products if you're a landlord or want to be landlord. If you're willing to pay for that education, there is something to be said for paying for the education of doing some of these things yourself and learning it. And that type of learning, it costs you one way, but it's not cost out of pocket. It's time, it's energy, but it is invaluable. So